If it's taking you more than 6 months to finish your first draft, and certainly if it's taking you years, and figuring out your story feels like such a slog, like it's always going to feel like pulling teeth to finish your manuscript, there is a reason for that. And no, you don't need more writing time, you don't need a new template, or to read that one craft book everyone's talking about that you haven't gotten around to yet. You definitely don't need to spend more time on the free online writing blogs that just regurgitate surface level advice. The truth is, the reason it's taking you so long is because you've never been given an actual step-by-step process that shows you exactly how to create an emotional novel that readers love. I mean, you may not have even ever been told that putting in emotion is a huge part of writing fiction. We just don't talk about this very much in our space, and I can't understand why. Bottom line, if you keep doing what you're currently doing to get your first draft finished, you're going to keep getting the results that you've already gotten. And I don't say that in any way to discourage you, but you have to understand that if you keep just working harder and harder and feeling more and more stress and frustration for the same or even worse results, then you're going to continue to think, of course, that writing has to be hard and always is hard. And then it will be. But guess what? It doesn't have to be. In this video, I'm going to show you the exact process I use to create a detailed outline that includes plot, emotion, which is the internal arc, and scene work in about a week, and then write my entire novel in 6 months or less. In fact, depending on the length, it is not uncommon for me to write a novel in 3 months. If that sounds like something you would like to learn to do with your novels, give me a hell yeah in the comments. Now, near the end of this video, I'm also going to give you the steps you need to do in order to teach yourself to be able to write as many stories as your heart desires easily without stress or burnout. Let's start with the piece that no one in our industry actually wants to talk about. Because if you want to be a successful fiction writer, you have to write stories that resonate deeply with readers. And that means we need to be honest with ourselves. The strategies you've been using up till now, the strategies that most authors are using, such as writing from the plot first, trying to use templates to force out our stories, following surface level craft advice, and the just start writing and you'll get there approach, are not going to help you succeed. Those strategies are not going to help you finish your first draft. And even if you just white knuckle your way through and force yourself to finish, you're not going to end up with a product that readers truly love and connect with. So what is it that nobody really wants to talk about? It's the idea that the editing is not the problem, the marketing is not the problem, the blurb is not the problem, the cover is not the problem. It might be the writing that is the problem. Now, of course, nobody wants to hear that. I don't want to hear that. I know you don't want to hear that. But again, if you're not writing a story that really resonates with readers, then the writing is the problem. And that's what needs to get fixed if you want to be a successful fiction author. So in order to really understand this and how to fix it, there's something that I really need you to wrap your head around. I want you to ask yourself, why do readers read fiction? Feel free to tell me in the comments. Why do you think readers choose to pick up a book and spend their time reading fiction? Chances are whatever you answered falls under the umbrella of what I call the 4 E's. There is escapism, entertainment, enlightenment, and education. So all of those answers are correct. But let's go a little more high level, because technically readers could get all of those things, any of the 4 E's, by doing things other than reading fiction. So why do they specifically choose to read fiction in order to get those things? Well, I'm about to tell you, and this is the key to everything, so please lean in. Readers read fiction in order to feel big emotions in a safe space. I'm going to repeat that because it bears repeating. Readers read fiction in order to feel big emotions in a safe space. Our world does not hold space for big emotions, does it? We are a fast-paced, instant gratification society. We're constantly told to hold it in, get over it, don't make a scene, right? But here's another little psychological truth for you. Human beings yearn to feel big emotions. More than that, most of them are aching to process and release those emotions. It's just how we're built. But because of the society we live in, we don't do that naturally. We're not taught to do it naturally. So our emotions tend to get stuck in our bodies. But fiction has this unique ability to help readers feel, process, and release emotions. And yes, they are the emotions of the character, right? The reader is living vicariously through the character's journey. But guess what? Not only does reading fiction help them practice releasing emotions, but along the way, they may actually release some of their own, which means that you can actually help make your reader more emotionally healthy by giving them an emotional story. And this is why readers are drawn to fiction, because they are absolutely starved of deep emotional experiences. And reading fiction can help them release pent-up emotions of their own. So we reach a point, usually around the climactic moment, that is called the catharsis. Now, catharsis doesn't just mean feeling emotions, it means an emotional release. That's why when sometimes we hit that point when we're reading a story, it feels like such a relief. We go, oh, it feels so good to finally get there, right? And that's what your reader's feeling. That's what they want to feel. And if you are not putting the right amount of emotion in the right combinations, in the right order, in the right places in your story, the reader's not going to feel that. And then the story will feel unfulfilling and unsatisfactory to them. Now, the next truth bomb I'm going to drop for you that you really need to understand is that emotion is also how we hook the reader. We're always talking in our industry about how we want to hook the reader. We need to do it in the first page, in the first paragraph, that sort of thing. And most people, myself included, when I was starting out, try to hook the reader through action, through plot twists, through shocking events. Maybe sometimes they will default to romance or sex, but none of those actually hook the reader. And don't get me wrong, they're great for story enhancement when used correctly, but if you're relying on those things alone to hook the reader, it's never going to work out for you. What really and truly hooks the reader is emotion. When the reader feels emotion, they sit up and pay attention. They keep reading. They keep turning pages. And there are ways to craft your story so that you can be sure that the reader is feeling emotion in every part of your story, in every chapter, in every scene, even on every page. If emotion hooks the reader and the reader is feeling emotion in every part of the story, then they're going to keep reading that story all the way through to the end. So what does this mean for you as the author? It means that you need to start thinking about the emotion of your story more. You need to write the story based on the emotion, not based on the plot. The plot will come later, but it needs to be layered over the emotion. The emotion is the foundation. The plot is great and obviously necessary, but once you know what's going to happen, you need to make sure the emotion is in there as well. Otherwise, no matter how twisted your plot is, the reader is just not going to be interested. So once again, I want you to understand that it's not you. It's the system you're using, the only one that you've ever been given to write your story. None of the advice that our industry gives, just write one book and then write another one, just start writing, just start pantsing, using plot-based templates, any of it, shows you how to put in the emotion. And some of the lower caliber teachers in our industry might specifically tell you to throw in a plot twist or a sex scene in order to keep the reader hooked, which is just incorrect and is actually going to do more harm than good if you're not using them correctly. So if you are actively trying to finish your story and you just keep hitting walls, or if you've finished a manuscript before, whether or not you've published it, then you're not a beginner writer anymore. You're not just noodling around. You're ready to actually finish your novel and commit to your fiction writing dreams. And when you get stuck at this later stage of your writing journey, it just hits differently, doesn't it? You start to think, I am an intelligent, educated person. Why can't I figure this out? So you start to think that it's you that's the problem. But as I've said, it is not. Let me know in the comments, have you ever worried, what if I never finish my story? What if I spend all this time and effort and never have anything to show for it? Have you ever worried that before? If you have, I get it. I know exactly how you feel because I was there once too. And you're not alone in this. I work with authors in my emotional storyteller intensive who feel exactly this way when they come to work with me. They're so frustrated with hitting walls when it comes to finishing their manuscript that they're ready to give up. They're sick of not figuring it out, of coming up with something that just feels trite or not good enough. They're sick of banging their heads against the desk, trying to figure out what should happen next, of trying to force their story out, of sitting down to write, staring at a blank screen and a blinking cursor, and then getting few, if any, words written. It's exhausting, it's frustrating, and it's oh so discouraging. I know. I see you. My students have that experience as well, and it truly feels like you're hitting a brick wall that you just can't figure out how to break through. And I'm really not just blowing smoke here. I can say this because I've experienced it myself. I wanted to write epic fiction that readers just fell in love with, but I had no idea how to make the story that I had come up with, which was real and vibrant and amazing in my head, feel that way on the page. I wanted the answer so badly, but I didn't know what it was. Then, finally, I switched my approach, and it completely transformed my fiction writing. I learned story psychology and reader psychology and how to write from the emotion first, and suddenly, I had all the answers I had been searching for. Now, with any story idea that I come up with, I have a repeatable system I can follow where I sit down, know exactly what to plan for my story and how to plan it, exactly how to get emotion into every single part of my story so that it hooks the reader and doesn't let them go until the last page. And here's a little secret for you, even then, it shouldn't stop. A really well-written story should have readers begging you for more, for the next book in the series, for more about that character. If you've never experienced that, I got to tell you, it's a fantastic experience. But you're only going to get that if the emotion is so potent that readers are craving more. So what does the system look like if you decide that you've had enough? If you know that you have to make a change right now, because otherwise you're just going to keep butting up against this wall and never actually finish your first draft. The truth is you don't need another template or another craft book or another stab at the same old templates again. You don't need to just keep writing or write one book and then another book. You need the system that will help you plan your story from the emotion so that your story automatically and powerfully hooks readers, and that will allow you to do that in 6 months or less. Go ahead and comment yes if you're in and you'd love to learn this today. Okay, so step number 1 is to learn to create using your subconscious mind. Most of us try to force our story out using logic, and there are a number of problems with that. Number 1, our creativity, our emotions, and our imagination, all instrumental in creating fiction, do not live in our logical conscious mind. They live in our subconscious mind. So trying to do anything creative with your conscious mind is a little like trying to turn a screw with a hammer. You're using the wrong tool. You're trying to get something to perform a function that it was never meant to perform. And you might make a little bit of headway eventually, but there are much more effective tools you can use, and there's going to be a lot less swearing and a lot less frustration, and it's going to go a lot more quickly, okay? The second problem with trying to use our conscious mind is that creativity absolutely cannot be forced. When you try to force story ideas or words to come out, so things like, I'm not getting up from this computer until I figure this out, that sort of thing, you are literally shutting down the very thing that will help you finish your story, okay? You are not doing yourself any favors by doing that. Because when you put stress on the creative part of your brain, it shuts down. It seizes up because of that stress. And you're hamstringing your fiction writing efforts. You have to learn to relax your brain and just let the ideas flow. And as we've talked about before, you're going to do that through journaling. All right, the second step is to plan your inner arc. It's fine to know the basics of your plot and what it will look like. That's how we tend to come up with our stories, of course. But once you're ready to really take whatever premise you've come up with and flesh it out into a complete novel, you have to pivot and plan from the inner arc, or in other words, from the emotion first. This is where most aspiring authors fall short. The foundation of your story is that inner arc, which is your character's transformation. And if you plan this first, not last, not as an afterthought, and definitely not ignoring it altogether, the elements of your plot and all the other parts of your story will click into place with relative ease. The third step is to use transformational human psychology, which I sometimes abbreviate as THP because it is a bit of a mouthful, to plan every part of your story. The great Christopher Vogler once said, "Story is a metaphor for a journey that leads to change." This means that the true nature of story, the true template for it, if you will, is not based in plot. It's based on the emotion and the psychology of the way that human beings transform. So the real story is the change the character goes through. Everything else, the other characters, world building, relationships, and yes, plot, are metaphors for how the character comes to that change. I use the basic 10 beats of human transformation to plan every part of my story, from the plot to the inner arc to even how I build individual scenes. It's like a cheat code. You take something that will automatically make your story engaging, that is psychologically wired to hook readers, that will always get the reader invested in what happens next, and use it to plan every part, every aspect, every level of your story. When you do that, the reader can't look away. They can't put the book down. Granted, sometimes they have to, but they're not going to want to. They'll have to keep reading to see how it ends. So now you've written an unputdownable novel. Yay! Using THP is a game changer for writing stories that readers fall completely in love with. And inside the Emotional Storytellers Intensive, I show you how to use it to plan every part of your story. We'll go step by step through the internal arc, the plot, the character relationships, the world building, the theme, every single part of story. The next step that you need to take is to create a detailed outline that has every chapter and scene planned out roughly, including what emotions to include in that scene, how to include them, what seeds for themes or red herrings you're planting along the way, and much more, okay? You're gonna do this before you start writing, because most people, they don't have this kind of outline at all because they don't know how to plan it. We use basic plot templates to plan events, but then when we sit down to write, we still draw a blank. That's what we've been talking about this whole time, right? Because we don't know where to start. We don't know how to get the emotion in. We don't know what it's actually going to look like on the page, even if we know roughly what's going to happen in that scene. Plot templates just don't help us with that. We're missing the implementation of all that crafting advice that we've been reading. But when you do have this detailed outline, one that was written from the subconscious mind, so you're not going to deviate from it, and you sit down to write, writing becomes so much easier. You know exactly what's going into the scene, so you just sit down and write it. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to rack your brain for how to make this better. And this is what takes your writing sessions from being able to write 200 to 400 words, and even then you're not sure if they're very high quality, to writing 1,000 to 2,000 words every hour, sometimes more, because you know exactly what you're going to put in the scene. And the fifth step is that you need to build a writing habit for accountability. Okay, we've all done it. We've all said, I'll just make sure I get my writing done. I'm an adult. I can block out times. I can stick to it. But have you really? At least to the extent that you would like to. Let's be honest. Some of the reason that you haven't been able to sit down and get your writing done has been all the things I've talked about. You weren't using THP. You weren't writing from the emotion. You didn't have the detailed outline. All of that contributed to your not being able to sit down and simply get the words written. But even once you've done all of that, building a solid writing habit is still key. And in case you had any doubt, let me just assure you that fiction writers can and do procrastinate with the best of them, yours truly included. So the best way to work through this is to get accountability. Go to group writing sessions, have accountability partners, have someone who is going to demand to see the words you've written once a week, something like that, whatever works for you. Use accountability to make yourself show up. And after a time, you will have built enough of a habit that you won't need the accountability anymore because your writing habit will already be established. But until you've built that habit, find some accountability. This isn't just a writing thing. We hear this all the time in every aspect of life. If we are trying to build a positive habit, we usually need to start with some kind of accountability to force us to do it. Okay, so bottom line, when you're trying to finish a novel, a genius story that you can't wait to get out to the world, you shouldn't feel like you're constantly hitting impassable walls. Creativity should never be frustrating. Your creative pursuits should never give you a stress headache. Fiction writing should be empowering, peaceful, and joyful. But the only way that's ever going to happen is if you know exactly what to do to take every story idea you ever get and craft it into something readers will resonate with. And even more than that, something they can't get enough of. Once you have that, writing your stories will become fun, fulfilling, empowering, and even joyful. But just sitting down and throwing spaghetti against the wall and hoping that eventually you're going to hit on that magical thing that will make your story a success, you're never going to get there. So if you know that this is exactly what you want to do, learn to write emotional, transformational stories that readers will fall head over heels for, and you want to get your current or next novel finished in the next 6 months, I'm going to break down this program step by step in this video here. I'm going to give you the exact week by week, 6-month schedule for what you will need to do in order to finish your novel in the next 6 months. So click right there and I will see you in that video.